Okay, we're going to talk about breathing through the nose. Why breathing through the nose is so important, the function it serves, and dive into a little bit of the philosophy which can help us use nasal breathing techniques to feel a sense of centeredness or balance or calm in the body. So the first key concept is resistance. Now obviously when you restrict airflow, you create resistance in the airways. It takes more effort to breathe. This means that when we're breathing through the nose instead of through the mouth, there is more resistance for the diaphragm to overcome. When we breathe in, the diaphragm drops down and flattens to make space for the lungs to expand. When we breathe out, the diaphragm ascends into a dome shape, compressing the air to expel the contents of the lungs. Okay? Now, when we do that through the nose and we feel that resistance, it means the diaphragm has to work a little bit harder as a pump. And this is not a bad thing, because having a strong diaphragm, which drives our breath, is better than making the job easy by breathing through the mouth and getting away with just using these accessory muscles like the traps, scalenes, pecs to chest breathe. You might think, why would we want to make the breath more difficult? Why would we want to restrict airflow? Why would we breathe through our nose if it's easier to breathe through the mouth? Well, breathing through the diaphragm also helps us to pressurize and stabilize our midsection. It helps us to essentially connect our upper and lower body. Breathing through the upper accessory muscles does not do that. In fact, it encourages arguably poor biomechanics and leads us to feel disconnected and sometimes flare through the ribs. We won't go into all of the details on that, but the important thing is that that resistance is good. It trains the diaphragm, it creates abdominal pressure with every breath, and that pressure not only decompresses you from the inside, massaging your organs, lengthening your spine, it also trains your diaphragm. And the last point is gas exchange. So even if it was better to have an easier breath in the shortcut sense and breathe through the mouth, the issue would be gas exchange. Now, breathing through the nose leads to a buildup of carbon dioxide in the blood. Carbon dioxide is necessary as a trigger for us to release oxygen from the cells. If we don't have enough carbon dioxide, then the oxygen that we breathe in won't be taken up into the bloodstream and then released for use in our body. Instead, we will be over-breathing, almost hyperventilating, taking in too much oxygen, but not having that air hunger that carbon dioxide gives us to make that oxygen useful. And so we come into the widespread chronic issue of over-breathing, but under-respirating, meaning we're all breathing through our mouths as if we are in some kind of emergency, trying to get that airflow, but underutilizing our oxygen. And we do that because we are in a state of stress, a state of threat perception, despite the fact that there are very few threats to our existence. So if we have to, we breathe through the mouth and the nose. We suck in that air, we go into fight mode, flight mode, whatever it is. But for the rest of the time, which is 99% of the time, we should be breathing through the nose. We should be passively training the diaphragm through the day, and that will help us with a bunch of health issues. Now, if you're curious as to why we're in this state of hypervigilance or chronic stress, which prevents us from breathing adequately, I think one of the key components is gut health. And the reason being that if you have an inflamed gut, or if you're bloated, if this part of your body isn't dynamic and working as a healthy elimination system, then this space is kind of already taken up. It's already stressed out, it's already doing that. And so often the gut health goes in line with having a stuck rib cage, goes in line with chest breathing, because it's not very comfortable to breathe through the belly and to expand this because you're already a bit stuck. And so the yogis say 1/3 for the breath, 1/3 for food, 1/3 for water. And the idea there, even if you don't follow it directly, is that you have enough space always to breathe well, and to have those three main energy inputs, food, water, breath, given in balance. Now moving on from that, back to the nostril breathing. The first thing you want to do is just practice breathing through your nose as often as possible, for the reasons we've discussed. You need to make it a habit. And you'll also notice that by breathing through the nose more often, it becomes easier. If there is any sense of air hunger, you get used to that. You start to realize that your breaths are going to be longer and they're going to be smoother, because you can't just rush the breath. You have to draw it in and let it out. And over time, that just becomes second nature. This also allows you to sit with a jaw and head position, which is conducive to releasing neck tension and allowing the crown to be tall, the back of the neck to be spacious, and a good facial structure when you practice it for enough years. Okay, and that's another field that splits off now from the breath discussion. We go into myofascial training, we go into orthodontics and why some people have crowded mouths and poor teeth and snoring and they can't breathe through their nose, and skull shape and how all of that forms. But essentially, yeah, nutrition, lifestyle always impact the breath, and the breath impacts to some extent nutrition and lifestyle. So when we're practicing nasal breathing, if we want to scale it up a little bit, if we want to experience more of this diaphragmatic awareness, more of an understanding of the pace of the breath, more of an understanding of abdominal pressure, if we want more of that feedback so that we can become more aware of it, then you can just block off a nostril. So take your right hand, raise a thumb, and then stick out your ring finger and pinky finger. Now if you exhale, press your right thumb to your right nostril and breathe in through your left. Breathe out through your left. And then switch. So you're going to breathe in through the right. Breathe out through the right. You've just started what is known as nadi shodhana. Now nadi shodhana is a pranayama, or a sort of breath practice, which allows you to alternate nostrils and breathe. Now this is a Sanskrit term, it comes from yoga. The idea in the simple terms is to breathe through both nostrils and to balance both nostrils. Now, why might they be unbalanced? Okay, so there could be structural issues. Maybe you actually have like a deviated septum or something, and so your bone is unbalanced. This might not be easy for everyone to do. For some people it's impossible. Some people have to have sinus surgery or nose jobs or whatever. But if you have the ability to even slightly encourage breathing through one nostril and then the other, and start to bring those into par, it's going to help you. Because of the resistance of the diaphragm and because of some more juicy knowledge that I will share with you in a moment. But if you found that breathing in through one nostril was okay and the other one was almost impossible, then what you can do is just use a partial block, okay? So don't completely block off the nostril you're not breathing through, just compress it slightly so that there is a bit more resistance. So you're still breathing through both, but you're making it harder to breathe through one to encourage more air to come through the other. Now, nadi shodhana, what does it mean? It basically means energy channel purification. Energy channel is a word that, or two words, that kind of describes the flow of subtle movement through the body. A lot of people get turned off by this idea of energy if they haven't already felt or intuited what it means. Energy is a word which can be used to describe patterns of flow of movement or connectedness in the body. And we use this word energy because A, we don't have the time to go into all of the scientific jargon and explain it in big words, and B, because that word does the job and it's something that's relatable for a lot of people, okay? So don't just write off the idea of energy if you hear that word. Don't assume that it's something completely esoteric and ungrounded. Energy is a word much like movement, which can be used to encapsulate many different types of experience. But the common thread between energetic experiences is that they're usually quite subtle. They're not quite felt in the body. They're not quite felt in the mind. It's kind of a connectedness of all of those things being felt at once. So the channels we're talking about are referred to as the right side being the sun poison prana. or Pingala. Now, sun poison prana, Pingala, this is a masculine type of energy generally. So this is the sun that rises. It's like if you have too much sun, it can poison you. The sun comes up, busyness comes into the day. We get our business done, we go about, we do our work. And moon nectar prana, or Ida. And moon nectar is that sweet release of effortlessness that comes at night, that we emerge from before we wake up. And so in the natural cycle of life, there's this alternation between sun poison and moon nectar, between Pingala and Ida, between masculine and feminine, arguably yang and yin, but these things aren't necessarily perfectly correlated, right? You see the theme though, there's a balance, there's duality happening. And when we're breathing, there is this same duality of inhalation and exhalation, and we're within that being more dominant on one side of the body, or one aspect, the masculine, or the other aspect, the feminine, the left side. So you don't have to read super deeply into this, but the idea is that if you can balance the left and the right, if you can find a unification between the duality, you can reach a state of cohesion. Cohesion, balance, whatever you want to call it, where your masculine and your feminine energies, your ability to act powerfully and your ability to retreat into rest, they work together in natural cycles with the sun and the moon and with your own breath, so that you are constantly able to remain centered. Now the center is the shushuma. The shushuma is the feeling of effortless action, the perfect marriage of each of these extremes. And the yogis say that you can access this when you have an understanding and a felt development of both energies, and that nadi shodhana, the practice of alternate nostril breathing, can help you do that. So that's a bit of the background on that. You don't necessarily have to go super deep into it. I don't like to tell people things and say this is what's happening in your body, but it's something to lean into if it resonates. And if it doesn't resonate, then just think of it as being balanced between left and right sides of the body, because often we find that for example, my right side tends to be the side that collects the most tension. My left side tends to be more lax. And so the types of injuries or soreness that I have on different sides tend to be different. And this is something that you can observe in your own body. Even with holding your face, sometimes we hold one side of the face with more tension, we smile more on one side, we squint more on one side. And so over a period of a lifetime, it actually starts to shape our face in really interesting ways. And there's this idea that maybe these dominant energies are kind of playing out through your life and shaping you through the years in different ways. And the sooner you can become aware of that, the sooner you can find a state of being which feels peaceful for you. So there it is. There's the philosophy. When it comes to the practice, all breath practices are not to be forced. The nature of breathing is not about force. It's about cultivating inner strength from the lungs, from the heart, from the diaphragm, from the posture, from the spine, from the awareness, and leveraging that strength to have a more effortless life. And so there is a sense of conscious practice or discipline, but that discipline is not the same thing as no pain, no gain. It's not the same thing as pushing harder to get more results. It is a steady reconnection to self, a steady exploration of what is inside, and it happens daily, smoothly, consistently in tiny, tiny bite-sized pieces. So that's how I recommend you practice this. If you're going to practice breathing through the nose, if you're going to practice nadi shodhana, thumb, index, pinky, breathe out, then breathe in. Left nostril first in, left nostril out, right nostril in, right nostril out. None of it is to be forced. That is it. Only other piece of info, every 90 minutes, they say, is what tends to be the cycle between the right and left side, or sun poison, moon nectar. And so you can pay attention to that during the day. Do you find yourself stuffy in your right nostril breathing through your left? If so, maybe it's a good time to do something a little bit more yin. Do you find yourself stuffy through your left and breathing more through your right? Or if so, maybe it's a good time to go do some work. Enjoy, guys.